All right, today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and, frankly, counterintuitive strategies from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. This is Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark.
And it's a wild question, isn't it? Because it really cuts against everything we're taught. We're supposed to look sharp, be competent, show how intelligent we are. But this law argues that the real power, the hidden power, often comes from putting a mask over your own brilliance. Why? Because it targets the most basic human vulnerability we all have, our ego, that deep-seated need to feel smart.
And here it is, the core idea behind this whole law. This is the central insight we're going to unpack. See, the key isn't just to make your target feel smart in general. It's to make them feel smarter than you. The moment they buy into their own intellectual superiority, something amazing happens. Their critical thinking just shuts down. All their suspicion melts away, and they become incredibly easy to influence. So, to really get a handle on this, we're going to go on a little journey through history and psychology. We'll start with one of the wildest scams of the 19th century, the Great Diamond Hoax. Then we'll dissect what makes this work, the human ego. From there, we'll jump from the Wild West to the high courts of Europe with the Bismarck Gambit. We'll even flip the script and look at when this law completely backfires, before finally we bring it all home and see how these lessons apply to our lives today. Okay, so our first story takes us way back to the American West in the 1870s. This was a time of huge ambition and even bigger schemes. And believe me, this tale is the perfect example of how acting simple can fool some of the most sophisticated people on the planet.
So on one side, you've got these two guys, Philip Arnold and John Slack. They look like weathered, uneducated prospectors, total country bumpkins. And on the other side, well, you've got the titans of American finance. We're talking William Ralston of the Bank of California, even agents for the Rothschilds. I mean, on paper, this looks like an intellectual slaughter. Financial geniuses versus a couple of guys who look like they just fell off a turnip truck.
The whole con kicks off when these two simple prospectors show up in San Francisco. They've got a bag full of raw diamonds, and they claim they've stumbled upon a mine unlike any other. Now, of course, the financiers are skeptical at first, but you can just feel their greed tingling, so they send their own expert to check it out. And this is where the performance of a lifetime begins. Arnold and Slack play their roles to perfection. They act all hesitant, totally baffled by financial talk, like they don't know what's going on. They lead the expert out to a field that they had already painstakingly salted with gems. The expert is completely fooled. He comes back with this glowing report, and just like that, the financier's caution evaporates, replaced by pure, uncut greed. But for the final seal of approval, the financiers send the gems to the one authority nobody would question, Tiffany and Company in New York. And the appraisal comes back. The gems are real, they say, and they're worth a staggering $1.5 million. That was the masterstroke. That one piece of paper erased every last shred of doubt. The financiers weren't just convinced anymore. They were absolutely certain they were about to get rich off a discovery brought to them by two lucky, simple-minded fools. So the financiers create a $10 million corporation. They pay the prospectors a fortune for the rights to this mine. And then, poof, Arnold and Slack are gone. They vanish. A real geological survey eventually reveals the devastating truth. There was no mine. The gems were just low-grade stones bought in Europe and planted in the dirt. The most powerful men in finance were publicly humiliated, completely ruined, outsmarted by the two fools they had so badly underestimated. So how in the world did this happen? How did men who deal with high-stakes deception every single day fall for such a textbook con? Well, the answer isn't about their IQ. It's all about their psychology. Let's circle back to that core psychological truth. The financiers' belief in their own smarts was absolute. And that feeling, that sense of superiority, is like a drug. It's a cognitive intoxicant. Arnold and Slack never once challenged that belief. In fact, they fed it. By playing the role of clodhoppers so perfectly, they let the financiers fall victim to their own biases. They saw exactly what they wanted to see. Two simpletons they could easily take advantage of, and that blinded them to all the red flags. You can actually break their entire strategy down into 3 simple steps. First, they figured out that their marks, the financiers, took immense pride in how shrewd and intelligent they were. That was their vanity. Second, they catered to that vanity by acting simple and unsophisticated. And third, once the financier's guard was completely down, they used that opening to execute the con. It is an absolute masterclass in psychological warfare. And this just lays it out so clearly.
the huge gap between perception and reality. The financiers looked and saw uneducated fools who just stumbled into dumb luck. The reality? Arnold and Slack were master manipulators. They were meticulous planners who spent months setting up this whole thing, from buying the gems in Amsterdam to perfectly acting out their roles. The financiers weren't fooled by the diamonds. They were fooled by their own sense of superiority.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, cool story about some con men, but what about the real world of power? Well, let's take this exact same tactic and scale it up to the highest levels of government. We're going to shift from the American frontier to 19th century Europe and look at a true master strategist, Prussian Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. So Bismarck's stage wasn't a diamond field, it was a card table. The game was quins, which is pretty much a game of pure luck. See, he was negotiating this incredibly important treaty with his Austrian rival, a guy named Count Blome. Now, Bismarck knew that Blome saw him as just an aggressive, impulsive Prussian. So, he decided to lean into that stereotype hard.
So the night before they finalize the negotiations, Bismarck plays quins with Blome. And he acts like a total madman, a reckless gambler just throwing money away, being loud and boisterous. Blome walked away that night completely convinced he understood Bismarck. He thought, this guy's no shrewd politician. He's an impulsive, emotional fool. So the next day, wrapped in this cozy blanket of intellectual superiority, Blome barely even glances at the fine print of the treaty. And right there, in that fine print, Bismarck had secured a massive win for Prussia. He won a political war by losing a simple card game.
This phrase just perfectly captures the entire strategy. The tiger, right? It's strong, it's arrogant, it sees the swine as nothing more than an easy meal, so it lets its guard down. And that is the exact moment the hunter, disguised as the swine, makes his move. Bismarck played the swine to absolute perfection, and the Austrian tiger never, ever saw it coming. So it's really tempting to think this law is a universal rule. Always play dumb. But like all strategies of power, it's not that simple. You have to be smart about it, because there are absolutely times when appearing foolish is the most foolish thing you can possibly do. So let's just ask the question straight up. What happens when people already know you're smart? What if you're in a position where everyone expects you to be an expert, to be in charge? Well, downplaying your intelligence in those moments can seriously backfire. It can make you look weak or even like you're trying to be deceptive. Take the art dealer Joseph Duveen. He was trying to sell a painting he claimed was a Dürer, but a young art critic at the party stands up and loudly declares it's a fake. Now, instead of playing dumb, Duveen did the exact opposite. He projected this aura of absolute, unshakable authority. He intimidated the critic with pure confidence, his tone, his expertise, until the young man backed down and apologized. In that situation, appearing smarter, not dumber, is what won the day. So, with all these stories, how do we actually use this complicated law in our own lives? It's really all about strategic intelligence, knowing when to turn the volume up on your brilliance and when to turn it way, way down. Think about it. In a negotiation, if you let the other side feel like they're getting the better of you, they might just give you what you actually want. In the workplace, constantly showing off how smart you are is a great way to make enemies. Sometimes, letting your boss feel like the smartest person in the room is the smartest thing you can do, especially if they're insecure. And here's the most important one, for self-defense. If you ever find yourself in a situation where someone is making you feel exceptionally clever, just stop, take a breath, and ask yourself if your ego is being stroked for a reason. You might just be someone else's mark. And that's really what I want to leave you with. Our whole culture celebrates being smart, right? We show off our credentials, we fight to be seen as the expert, but this law reveals this powerful counter-strategy. Being underestimated gives you freedom. It gives you space to move, to observe, to plan, all while everyone else thinks they've got you figured out. It's the quiet power that, so often, ends up winning against the loud one.